So in case you don't know, there's been a ton of buzz and controversy around Frank Ocean's set at Coachella 2023. And this last Sunday, I was there in person, I was close to the stage, I got to experience it firsthand, and by the end of the show, I felt like it was hands down the best set of the festival, and maybe even the most moving set of any festival I've ever seen. But in that exact same moment, everyone around me was furious. One of my friends said Frank Ocean made me cry, and not in the way that I wanted him to. Two other friends left halfway through the set, and another guest said I've been to 13 Coachellas, and that was by far the worst closing act I've ever seen. So why was this such a polarizing performance? I want to explain why I thought it was the best set of the festival, and hopefully shed some light on what was actually happening, and point out the things that I feel like everybody missed. Now before I start, as a disclaimer, a lot of new info is coming out every day this week, so some of what I say might be inaccurate by the time you watch this, but most of it is just based on my firsthand experience of the show. Okay, so first of all, he didn't sell any merch at the festival, and he honestly might be the only headlining act that's ever done this, at least that I know of, because who in their right mind would give up that money in that promotion? And once I heard that, it was clear to me that his presence at Coachella was going to be very out of the ordinary. So come Sunday night, it's time for the performance, and of course, he's late. And he ends up being like at least an hour late, I think. And that's because originally there was going to be an ice rink on the stage, and all these ice skater dancers doing a whole performance on the ice rink. And that would have been absolutely incredible. But at the last minute, Frank pulled the plug on the whole ice skating thing and decided to do a way more stripped back and intimate setup. And just to paint the picture for you, Coachella is 250,000 people. That's over 2 weekends. And last year, Harry Styles as a headliner had 100,000 people watching. So I would guess that for Frank's set, there were probably at least 100,000 people there. Especially because he never does shows and has a crazy cult following. So he's an hour late, people are packed like sardines as far as you can see, and the entire stage is one LED wall with one little tiny rectangle cut out in the bottom of it. And we're just waiting, and then finally the house lights dim, and some footage of the stage shows up on the LED walls, and there's some gear on the stage, and there's some people just walking around the gear in circles. I found out later that these were the ice skaters, but obviously the rink got taken down, so instead of ice skating, they were walking in circles. And they just kept doing this in complete silence. There was the initial roar of the crowd, you know, the whole thing crowds do when the show starts, and then just silence, and just people walking in circles. I mean, this was probably happening for like 10 minutes. No singing, no music, no nothing, just silence and people walking in circles. And this brings me to my first point of why the set was so profound to me, and that is, there was so much space. Between pretty much every song that he performed, he would make everyone wait in silence. And I'm not talking like 15 seconds. I'm talking like sometimes 5 minutes at a time, sitting there on stage, not saying anything. Everyone just standing there in silence, looking up, waiting for something to happen. Sometimes he would talk to the other musicians on stage, and then very rarely he would actually address the audience. And when he did, you can bet every single person that could hear his voice was completely glued to the stage. And he had our complete attention because people wanted answers. Like, why did we just watch people walk in circles for 10 minutes before you even sang a single word? Why is there so much space between songs? And why are you hiding behind a huge LED wall? And you're not walking out on some platform in the middle of the crowd so everyone can see you and take videos of you. Like, why aren't you doing what every other headliner does?
It's been so long, everybody talks about how long it's been. It's been so long, it's been so long, but I have missed you.
And part of what he did was he got the undivided attention of statistically the most distracted generation in history. And to me, Frank used space as a tool to make each song so special. And it pissed a lot of people off because, you know, we're glued to our phones, we need stimulation constantly, and space is so uncomfortable because it forces you to think. Silence forces you to think. You have to face yourself and all the things you've done, good and bad, and you have to actually tune into your life. And all this space made the moments where he was actually playing songs, in my opinion, absolutely remarkable. You've probably heard the term scarcity. It's used in marketing. It's basically when there's less of something, it's more desirable. You know, supply and demand. And so this might be kind of a long shot, but to me it seemed like the people walking around in circles, the 5-minute breaks between songs, were one way of saying that people are stuck in this loop of stimulation and don't have the ability to sit in silence or even think deeply about anything. And I get why it pissed so many people off, whether they realized what was happening or not. So that was in between songs, but what about when he was actually performing? It's pretty clear that some of the set was rehearsed, but it seemed like a lot of it wasn't. There was an aspect of it that was improvisational. Like they would finish a song, they would sit in silence, sometimes they would talk a little bit and figure out the next song that they were gonna do, which I personally thought was so cool because it felt so authentic. And I'm pretty sure the entire music setup was all analog gear, like super old synths synths with like a million cables, just random mics placed all over the stage, and Frank would just go from one to another. And the whole stage was set up like a studio. And to me, it felt like we were in the studio with him, which I thought was so cool. It felt so intimate. Now, from where I was in the crowd, I couldn't actually see them on the stage. I saw Frank in the rectangle a few times, but I never actually saw the band. I only saw them on the LED screen, so it was almost like the whole performance was watching behind the scenes footage. Now, when he actually sang, his voice was incredible. He did these little vocal runs and variations that made each song unique, and they did these really cool arrangements with all the analog gear on stage, and from an audiophile and musical standpoint, it was an absolute 10 out of 10. And then, with no warning, in the middle of his song Chanel, all of a sudden it just switched into a remix, and there was like a 20-minute rave party DJ set. And DJ Crystal Mess played a bunch of music that I've never heard before. And then after that, everyone's like, what the frick was that? And Frank made a little speech saying, it's good that it's not always about me. And he wanted to show the crowd other people's music and put other people on, which I thought honestly was pretty cool. Like, I've never heard of a headliner doing that.
It's like good that it's not always about me, so I just wanted to bring a little bit of that into this, but back to the songs.
I will say, though, that it was insanely chaotic. It seemed like most of the camera footage on the screens was this security guy just tearing it up. He was just dancing his heart out. And the crowd loved him, and it really played well into the whole "it's good that it's not all about me" statement. So after that, they did a few more of his songs with a ton of uncomfortable space, as usual. And then it came to the end of his show. What a freaking ending. Honestly, what a frustrating ending.
Guys, I'm being told it's curfew, so that's the end of the show. Thank you so much.
And that was it. From that point on, he was never seen on the cameras or the stage, and his band was just sitting there for a little while, like, what's going on? And then finally the screens turned off and the house lights came on, and we knew that it was over. And I thought to myself, of course. The set was so chaotic, so much space, so good when it was good, and so uncomfortable at times. And then just like that, it was over before we were ready for it to be. And honestly, that's how life is in a lot of ways. And more than anything, this performance made me reflect. That's why I thought it was the best set at Coachella. After every other set I saw, I thought about it for a little while, and then I just moved on. But after this set, I felt like I had actually spent time with him in the studio. And I actually had time to reflect about each moment in the set because there was so much space. And I'd be able to think like, wow, that version of Pink and White was so sick. Or that was the most beautiful version of Godspeed that I'm ever going to hear in my entire life. And it was just different. And to me, that was really refreshing. And after 6 Coachellas, this was by far the most memorable performance, apart from Bon Iver a few years ago, because I cried so much.
It's gonna take it as it goes. I could go forward
Oh, I love Justin Vernon. But the main point of all of this is that it caused me to be present and actually tune in to the moment. And whether the moment was pure bliss or absolute chaos, I was actually there experiencing it in the moment instead of just reflecting about it the next day or the next week and only experiencing it in retrospect. And honestly, I came to see Frank Ocean and I felt like I got Frank Ocean. In my mind, he's such a visionary, and I wanted whatever he wanted to give me instead of going in with all these expectations of what I wanted from him. I mean, you gotta think about it. It's like going to a Michelin star restaurant and telling the chef exactly what you want. Nobody does that. You go there to experience what the chef has for you. His creative vision, not yours. Frank did what he wanted, not what everyone else wanted. He's an artist that clearly doesn't care about other people's opinions, and in the context of a headlining performance at Coachella, that really pissed a lot of people off. But for a few of us, it was an absolute work of art. And at the end of the day, he can do whatever he wants. You're paying to see Frank Ocean. You're not paying to see Frank Ocean play all of your favorite songs, because he's not really that kind of artist. He's an absolute wild card. And I think me going into the show with that mindset allowed me to fully enjoy the entire performance from beginning to end. A lot of what he did was just basically say, I'm the captain. And some of it honestly seemed like kind of a dick move. But at the end of the day, he's the artist, and he should be able to call the shots. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I understand why people are mad about it. I would have loved to see more songs, but I was completely satisfied with what I got to see. Now, normally my channel is dedicated to teaching you how to make the best music that you're capable of, but I felt like this video is actually so important to make because so many of you songwriters and producers out there are trying to make music that you think other people want to hear, instead of making music from your heart. And I know because I did this for years. I still do it sometimes. And sometimes it's really important to stick it to the man, in a sense, and do what feels most authentic to you, even if it's totally misunderstood in the moment. This may sound kind of silly, but when I was standing there in the crowd, watching all of this beauty and chaos intertwined. I thought to myself, I feel like I'm actually watching an artist, and not just a product of the industry, not somebody who has this crazy team of writers and producers, but really an actual artist. And because of that, to me, it was the best set of Coachella 2023. I'm curious to know if any of you guys watching were there in person, or maybe saw it on the live stream, and what your guys' thoughts are. I read all the comments and respond when I can, so let me know what you think. And whether you loved or hated Frank Ocean's set, I hope you're at least a little bit inspired to make incredible art without letting the opinions of other people stop you. If you want to learn how to make better music, you can check out one of these videos, and remember to stop making excuses and start making music. Cheers.